Now, this morning, I have the privilege of sitting and chatting online with the chairman of the People's National Movement, Mr. Marvin Gonzales, who is also the MP for Lopino Aruca and former Minister of National Security, former Minister of Public Utilities, and former acting Attorney General. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning, Shenell. I hope you're hearing me clearly, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to you and the people of Tobago and the wider national community.
Excellent. I mean, it's a pleasure to sit with you and chat again here on Tobago Updates. This
Sorry it wasn't
morning,
live in studio.
sorry?
I say I'm sorry that it was not live in studio.
Right, exactly. Exactly, which is always a lot better. But this morning we are, taking a different perspective. Last time you were here, you were telling us all about some of the projects that were happening throughout Tobago, from Tobago East, right down to Tobago West. But this morning, we're talking about the dismissal of CPEP workers, along with a number of other topics. But primarily, this has been high on the People's National Movement's agenda, since entering office and the dismissal of these workers. Just give us a quick overview of that situation as we give the public some insight.
Well, I think the population is aware by now that a couple of weeks ago, the government, through its main spokesperson, the line minister for CPEP, the Honorable Barry Padarat, announced that the government is looking at the restructuring of the CPEP program. And it came as a surprise when one day, over 300 CPEP contractors received notice of termination from the CPEP company, termination without cause or something like that. And as a result of that, over 11,000 workers were placed on the breadline. Now, that came as a surprise because the government, up to this point in time, has not revealed what policy changes it intends to pursue with respect to this program. Safe to say that they have been making all kinds of accusation against the former People's National Movement government, former government officials, sitting members of parliament, sitting members of council, what have you. But they have not stated what different it is going to pursue with respect to this program, and in so doing, their inability to state what policy program that they are intending to pursue, they have dismissed over 300 contractors and putting over 11,000 people on the breadline. The minister said and gave the assurance to the 11,000 workers that they will be re-employed, but we have questioned the veracity of that information because the way in which the program is administered and executed, a government cannot assure 11,000 workers who are working in the program that they are going to be re-employed in the program. So as we speak, over 11,000 people have been placed on the breadline. The People's National Movement retained a group of attorneys who are taking issue with the decisions taken by the government with respect to the termination of over 300 contractors. The matter is set to be determined or heard rather at the end of this month. The attorneys are also pursuing injunctive relief to prevent the government from pursuing its decision until the hearing and the full determination of the matter. So we expect that at the end of this month, the application for injunctive relief will be heard and will be determined, and which obviously is going to effectively put a halt to what the government is attempting to do at this point in time, so that the court can examine the actions of the government and make a final determination on the matter. I can also assure you, and the matter that was filed is a breach of contract matter, which can have implications for all of the contractors who have been impacted by decision of the government. And in the coming days, we intend to also pursue judicial review to file an application for judicial review to take issue with the manner in which the government has managed the issue, as the program, and especially given the public pronouncements of the minister and other government spokespersons on this matter. So we are tackling it from a breach of contract issue, which is already before the courts. And in the coming days, we are also going to be taking issue or filing an action in public law judicial review to ask the courts to review this decision that was taken by the government on behalf of the
Right.
workers.
And from the perspective of the People's National Movement, what would have been the appropriate mechanism to use to dismiss these contractors? Are you recommending that a report would have been laid before the Parliament, and then from that stage, then they dismiss the contractors based on the findings of said report? What exactly would the PNM have stated to be the right way of going about dismissing these contractors if this current administration has identified corruption in the way that these contracts were awarded?
Well, the thing about it is that the government has not demonstrated or provided any evidence of corruption in the manner in which these contracts have been awarded. Under our current procurement laws, if there are any issues with respect to the award of contract, we have an independent body that is charged with the responsibility to investigate these issues, which is the Office of Procurement Regulator, and that office was set up within our new procurement regime to investigate these very matters, and it is not for politicians to be involved in these matters, and that was set up so for legitimate reasons, because oftentimes these matters are muddied by political to and fro's and persons who have their own political axe to grind and persons who have their own agendas to serve. And therefore, we have been telling the government that if you have any evidence of any wrongdoing with respect to the award of any of these contracts, then forward that to the Office of Procurement Regulator so that the matter can be determined. If any fraud or any breach of the criminal laws have been committed, then you can also forward that to the Anti-Corruption Bureau, the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, etc. But you cannot, and that is the habit of this government since assuming office over the last 3 months. They use the angle of making broad brush statements against the former government. And then once they put that out into the public domain, then it is now utilized as the platform for which you bring the program to an end. I have my views about that, and we are not foolish, and we understand fully what is happening. But coming back to the question that you've asked, and you're absolutely right, we've been asking the government that you are saying that you're going to restructure the program, and up to this date, you have not provided the policy, you have not provided the directions, you have not provided how you are going to reform this program. And so the government has to come clean. The government needs to tell the country, because at the end of the day, you have over 300 contractors, legitimate contractors that are impacted, persons who have their own interests. They have their interests because they are in legally binding contracts with the CPEP company, all right, for different periods, and over 11,000 citizens who are vulnerable citizens who are on the lower end of the economic ladder being impacted by this very, very critical policy or action by the government. And you would expect that a responsible government, in approaching a situation like that, should have exercised better judgment and prudence in how these matters are handled, because you're talking about over 11,000 workers, 11,000 citizens. And we are now in the vacation period. A lot of these people have financial obligations. They are sending their children to school. They have to provide their family with food to eat, etc. They are the most vulnerable citizens in our country, and you would expect that a responsible government would approach this in a very responsible and prudent manner so that you don't impact the lives of 300 contractors, legitimate contractors, and 11,000 citizens. So far, the government has not provided the country with how it is going to reform the program as they have stated. And that is a very, very serious matter for us in the People's National Movement. But never believe that the government intended to reform the program. We know exactly what this was intended to do. It was to terminate, bring an end to the 300 contractors so that they can give to persons who are politically aligned with the
Right,
present administration.
and you
Is
have stated in the past that this has been a move by this current administration to target particularly PNM contractors.
well,
But if it has been over 300 contractors that have been dismissed, how does one pin down that, okay, the contractors that are being targeted are specifically, PNM based supporters?
Chanel, that is and I hope I have the liberty to refer to you as Chanel,
Of
or if
course.
you, yeah, Chanel, right, good. Let me tell you this, right? It is very unfortunate that we have arrived at a juncture in this country where contracts that have been awarded under the previous PNM government, legitimately awarded, or persons who have been appointed during a transparent recruitment process under the PNM government, they are now being branded as PNM. And the government believes that they now have the, the ability to go after contractors, legitimate contractors, and persons appointed in government. You're seeing what has happened in TSTT just a couple of days ago, where the CEO was terminated or fired, and the CEO was, notwithstanding the fact, I mean, you are in government, and every day state companies are employing people, they're employing executive managers, etc. The government agencies are contracting, they're engaging into contractual arrangements with contractors and what have you. But this government has taken an approach that once you enter into a contract under some time between the People's National Movement being in government over the last 9 or 10 years, and once you are engaged in executive recruitment or appointment during the tenure of the PNM, then you are PNM, and therefore they are coming after you. That is the approach of the government. So they believe that the 300 contractors who are engaged in contractual arrangements with the CPEP are somehow aligned, all are aligned with the PNM, and therefore must be removed with immediate effect. And that approach to governance, it is very, very troubling. It lends itself to grave instability in a country. And I dare say it sets a very dangerous precedence for the country moving forward. Because when the PNM came into government in 2015, a couple months ago, the UNC renewed a lot of the CPEP contractors. And that was admitted by the former minister within the People's Partnership Administration, who is now a current minister in this government, Dr. Rudal Munilal. And when he was asked about it, he said, well, nothing was wrong with that. It's because it was done under his tenure. What did the PNM do? And the PNM came into government in 2015. The PNM did not terminate all of these contracts, but the PNM honored the contractual arrangement until the end of their natural life before it went back out to procure new contractors or additional contractors or contractors within the program. And you cannot tell me that over 300 contractors in the program are somehow aligned with the People's National Movement. In a country with 1.3 or 1.4 billion people, can anyone rightly say that in a program with over 300 contractors, all of these contractors are PNM contractors? Well, according to the gospel of the UNC, that is so. So over the 300 contractors, they are all PNM, and therefore they must be terminated, notwithstanding the fact that you're placing over 11,000 people on the breadline. It is just irresponsible government. It is government by imprudence, and it is governance by recklessness that is having a tremendous impact on the lives of innocent citizens.
Right, and we have heard from this administration as it pertains to the CPEP program, and they have made a number of allegations as it pertains to the way that the People's National Movement has run that program. They claim that CPEP workers were used for campaigning during the election time. That CPEP contracts were given out as tokens to PNM financiers and supporters, and even that there were sitting ministers who have had relatives working in the CPAP program who were not even in the country. How do you respond to some of these allegations?
I think the last point that you raised with respect to relatives working in a program who are outside of the country, I think that one is in relation to the URP and not
Okay.
CPEP, right? Just to make that abundantly clear. But it's something that we could also discuss. But it comes back to the point that I've made a short while ago, Chanel, that the government, their playbook is to make all kinds of wild allegations, unsubstantiated allegations against persons or officials in the former PNM regime, and then use that to gut an entire program, thereby placing 11,000 people on the breadline. Assuming and not admitting, assuming, let's assume that what they are saying, let's say 10% or 20% of what they are saying is true. I'm not admitting it. I'm just assuming and that it may be true. Does that give you the right to terminate a program and put 11,000 people on the breadline? And that's the point I continue to make. If you have the evidence, then you have the appropriate authorities that you can refer these matters to so that they can properly be investigated, so that we can get to the bottom of it. That is how a mature democracy functions. That is how a country functions. But it is not the duty of politicians to engage in self serving arguments to fit their political narrative and their political agenda to get at their political opponents. And in so doing, you put 11,000 people on the breadline. And the
Right.
responsible thing to do, Chanel, as I continue to say, is to refer those matters to the appropriate authorities so that they can take action. But it cannot be justification that you can terminate illegally over 300 contractors and putting 11,000 people on the breadline. That is governance by recklessness. It is governance by vengeance or revenge, and utilizing some of these and cherry picking issues within a program that you should deal with, and using it to impact the lives of innocent citizens. That is just the wrong way in which you go about doing things. But it is all about trying to control the minds of people. It is all about throwing red meat to their base to support the government in gutting this program that they believe and they convince their supporters they are all the people in that program, the contractors and people who are employed at PNM, and now it is UNC time, and therefore we should remove all of these people so that we can clear the deck to bring in our people. And that is what this
Right.
is all about.
But
That is
but
what.
there was a slogan by this current administration that said when UNC win, everybody wins. And we heard from, Minister Paderat in regards to the persons who were placed on the breadline stating that they can apply for public assistance if that is needed to help them. But we're in a situation where school is about to open and a number of families now have to, be able to prepare for kids returning back to school and to provide all that is needed. What is the PNM currently recommending to those persons who are now on the breadline and not knowing where their next dollar comes from?
And that is the level of recklessness by this government. That is the level of recklessness by the line minister for CPEP, Barry Paderat. You are putting 11,000 people on the breadline as during this vacation period where people are concerned about getting uniforms and books for their children, and you are telling them that, oh well, you are free to go and apply for social grants from the Ministry of the People. And you would have noticed the statement issued by the same Ministry for Social Development and nothing burger, giving no assurance whatsoever to these workers. And that is the level of disdain by this government. I mean, couldn't this matter been done differently? I am not saying that the PNM's position is that a government has the right to reform any program it wishes to reform, but you have a responsibility to do it within the laws and in a responsible manner. And that is what we expect the government to do.
All right.
But
And even as it pertains to that, the filing of the injunction and the legal case that is being mounted by the People's National Movement, what type of results are you expecting to see come out of that? Because, even if the court does award, the sum of the value of the contract to the contractors, which we have seen similar things happening in the past, how does that trickle down to the workers who have been dismissed?
well, one of the things that we are asking the court for is injunctive relief, which is to stop the government from proceeding with its action, to give an order that the government adheres to the terms, or the CPEP company adheres to the terms of the contracts with the 300 contractors, together with the extension, because the attorneys are contending that the contracts are legitimate and the extension granted is legitimate. So that we're expecting that. But you ask a very, very important question, and that is the uh, that's the third action that we plan to file in court. The third action is with the industrial court, where we are filing those claims on behalf of the workers, and that these workers were illegally dismissed because they are in fact employees of the CPEP company, not with the individual contractors, because the CPEP company is responsible for paying them, and therefore they are employees of the CPEP company. And the manner in which the CPEP company went about handling this particular matter, we are asking the industrial court to intervene on behalf of the workers and give an order to against the CPEP company to compensate the workers who have been summarily dismissed and illegally dismissed from the program.
Right, and even
And
as we take shift gears,
sorry,
yes,
I was
sir.
about to say that we expect that the 11,000 workers will receive judgment in their favor when the appropriate action is filed in the industrial court.
Right, and because we have limited time this morning, and I want to shift gears, but before we do so, is there anything that you want to say, particularly as it pertains to this case of the dismissal of the CPAP workers?
Yeah, what I've noticed um, in recent times is that in order to control the narrative, the attorney representing CPEP, the attorneys representing CPEP, that is Mr. Anand Ramlogan, they are they are attempting to litigate the matter in the public domain. So the courts have set deadlines for the parties to file their respective affidavits on each other, and that is happening before the actual trial of the matter. But every time the attorney for CPEP company, Mr. Anand Ram Logan, files the affidavits in court, it is shared with the media, and that is the reason why you are seeing a lot of these issues with respect to cabinet approval or lack of cabinet approval being ventilated and dominating the discussions. And I find it to be quite unfortunate, because these are matters that are before the courts, and the court will eventually adjudicate on those matters. And therefore, we are of the view that, well, first to begin, we are not going to respond to those issues, because those are issues being placed before the courts, and we are not going to participate in any public discussion on matters that are before the courts. And therefore, the PNM's position is that we are not going to be baited into entering into any discussions on matters filed on affidavits, so that the court can adjudicate on them. those matters and the issues with respect to cabinet approval or lack of cabinet approval with respect to the extensions, the court is going to be the final arbiter on that. But on with respect to this ongoing matter, if the other side, their plan is to adjudicate it in the court of public opinion, our position is that we have brought the matter to court and we will have our say, and the attorneys and the contractors will have their say in the court.
All right, and finally, even as it pertains to the state of emergency that we're now in, what is the PNM's position on, the latest calling of yet another state of emergency within a short, period of time?
Well, what this has shown, Chanel, is that the government never had a plan. With respect, this government has spent, or the UNC has spent 9 years in opposition, criticizing almost every policy decision, almost every bill, calling for the firing of attorney general, calling for the firing of ministers of national security, asking the government to present its plan, telling the country that it has a plan to deal with the crime situation in the country. And if the country is were to vote for them, they are going to implement their plan. Well, they were voted into office and they have the opportunity to present their crime plan to reduce crime and criminality in Trinidad and Tobago. And the first major thing they have done is to invoke a state of emergency. And up to this time, the UNC has not presented its plan for solving crime or reducing crime in Trinidad and Tobago. And if that is the calling of the state of emergency is one of the first initiative of the government in the fight against crime, something that they criticized the PNM government for when it was called last year, then that should tell you everything, that they never had a plan, they will never have a plan, and that their conduct so far and their public utterances so far with respect to crime and criminality in Trinidad and Tobago should bother every right-thinking citizen, because it is quite clear now to all of us that they never had a plan, and nothing that they are going to do moving forward in this term will reduce crime and criminality in this country. The police commissioner was the first to address the nation, and the first that we've seen is what was supposed to be a confidential document moving from the commissioner to the National Security Council with respect to the calling of a state of emergency. That was the first document that was placed in the public domain. Then the police commissioner came out and he gave a press conference giving an explanation for the state of emergency. And a couple of hours after, the Attorney General came forward giving another explanation for the calling of the state of emergency, including an attempt to bomb the office of the Attorney General and matters like that. And then later on in the day, the Prime Minister issued a statement giving other reasons for the calling of the state of emergency. So you have the Commissioner giving one reason, the Attorney General giving other reasons, and the Prime Minister giving other reasons. Three conflicting reasons as to why this state of emergency is called. The PNM's position is that we will support law enforcement and we will support the Commissioner and the TTPS in the fight against crime. And if there is a legitimate threat coming from the prisons, and the police is of the view that the only way in which it can neutralize this threat is the calling of a state of emergency, then the People's National Movement will support the police in doing so, in quelling this threat to ensure that we have law and order in Trinidad and Tobago. But we have grave concern with respect to the functioning of the government and the behavior of the government with respect to this matter. And I can tell you this much. We have not seen the Prime Minister make any public appearance since last week, Thursday, at their post-cabinet news conference. Since the calling of the state of emergency, the Prime Minister has not made herself public to this country to speak to the people of this country during this state of emergency. We have not seen from her. We just heard that she issued a statement that purported to have come from the Prime Minister. And that, to us in the PNM, is very troubling. And we draw the country's attention to this reality. We have not seen the Prime Minister since last week, Thursday. And if that is not troubling, and if that does not trouble every right thinking citizen, well, then tell me what is going to trouble us. So I need to draw the country's attention to this. And also to draw the country's attention to the fact that the UNC campaigned on a crime plan, indicating to the country that they have a plan to solve crime. And the first initiative in the fight against crime is the calling of a state of emergency. That perhaps is an indication that when things are getting out of control and the government is under pressure, more state of emergencies will be called in this country because they never had a plan to deal with it in the very first place. They spent 9 years in opposition, criticizing almost everything that the PNM did in the fight against crime, and they never put themselves together as a responsible opposition that is now in government to deal with this very intractable problem in this country. And I am telling this country and putting this country on notice, do not expect any plan from this government with respect to the fight against crime and criminality in this country.
Understood. Now, we want to thank you so much for your time this morning and coming on and giving us those perspectives, specifically as it pertains to the dismissal of those CPEP workers and the state of emergency. We're going to take a quick break right here, and we'll be back with much more conversations right after this. See you soon.
Thank you very much.
It's a brand new morning.